The purpose of this video is to unpack the assessment task for EDAR504, the arts curriculum. And I'm going to go through some suggested ideas as to how you can approach this assignment under the proviso that you must remember that it's really important to come and ask us questions and to engage with us in the development of your assignment. So whilst these kind of assessments, in a way are a test because it's about proving the knowledge that you know and your ability to apply that knowledge to the development of learning experiences for children in classrooms. We certainly operate on a level where we want you to do well and we really want you to understand it. So that does usually require an engagement with one another. So as you're developing this, as you're looking through the assignment tasks, of course there are going to be questions. Please take the time to come and talk to both myself and Beth so that we can assist you in developing some really good submissions. So as I talk through this video, I'm going to try and refer to performing arts and visual arts together. If I slip into just the speak of visual arts, remember that the two tasks, so there's one for your performing arts component of EDAR504 and there's one for the visual arts component of EDAR504, that the two tasks are actually exactly the same. The only difference being that one is for performing arts and one is for visual arts. So the beauty of this is that whichever one you start off with is almost sort of like finding your feet, and you're doing this within 6 weeks of starting a new course. It's the first time you've come across lesson plans. It's the first time that you've engaged with curriculum for probably quite a long time, and so there is most definitely a recognition from my point of view and Beth's point of view that it is very exploratory and that you're finding your way through it, so that when you get to the second submission, whether it's performing arts or visual arts, there will then be an expectation for you to be drawing upon the feedback that you have received, and obviously understanding that you'll be more experienced by that stage in the development of this particular task. So the first iteration will be moderated with an acknowledgement of that you're new to this. The second one will probably be moderated a little bit, with a bit more sort of focus and toughness, I suppose. Not to make it difficult, but there will be an expectation that by that stage you would have responded to the feedback. So in both of the tasks, the overall task is to develop an educational resource kit that focuses on the implementation of the performing arts or the visual arts in a primary classroom setting. So your key focus here is an educational resource kit and understanding what that might be. Now, for the purpose of the task, we have told you what that is going to be. So it's going to be 2 lesson plans and a total of 4 learning activities. So there will be 2 learning activities per lesson. Okay, so 2 lesson plans that show evidence of an integrated theme and incorporate 4 learning activities which both link together and address the 4 strands of the curriculum. So this is like a sequence of learning activities within 2 lessons. The second component is the development of practical and theoretical resources to support and inform teaching and learning in the performing arts or the visual arts in the primary classroom context. And these are drawn from the 6 workshops. So your task, so each task is going to comprise of 2 lessons with a total of 4 learning activities and 6 practical and theoretical resources. So I would say you'd have 6 resources, and within that resource there'll be a practical component and a theoretical component. And I will talk about those more shortly, about how you might think about those. The first thing to do, though, in all of this is to go back to the learning outcomes, and the learning outcomes can be found in the unit outline. Now that you are into week 4, I think that if you now go and revisit these learning outcomes, you'll begin to see what we are doing in the workshops and in our conversations and in some of the little tasks that you've been asked to do in terms of building your knowledge. It's also worth acknowledging at this point that the building of that knowledge is, some of it is directed, so some of it, the directed component is in our 3 hours of face-to-face per week. A big component of it is the self-directed aspect of it as well. So conversations you're having about yourself, not about yourself, with yourself and with each other. The way you're engaging in some of those little tasks. I know in the visual arts component, I've asked you to add a couple of things to Google Drive, or I've asked you to comment on, develop a concept map or something like that. And whilst those aren't required tasks, they are helpful tasks in terms of developing your understanding. With the learning outcomes, these are what determine whether you successfully complete the unit or not. So what we do is we mark against these learning outcomes, and you will see that as you once you look at the 2 criteria that make up each of these tasks, embedded into those 2 criteria are these 5 learning outcomes. In order to pass the unit, you need to meet the learning outcomes. So if for any reason you are unable to meet one of them in the first assignment, so remembering that each task has all 5 learning outcomes embedded into it. If for any reason you weren't able to meet one in the first task that you complete, we will work very hard to make sure that you meet it in the second one. So we would then be able to say, yes, this particular student has now met the learning outcomes. So make sure you read through them, and if you've got any questions about them, let us know. So the first criterion is the development of 2 lessons comprised of 4 activities in the performing arts and the visual arts that incorporate a range of teaching strategies, including assessment, the ethical application of ICT, and the engagement of students with diverse cultures. So this is quite a broad criterion, and what I'm going to do now is go through what that's going to look like individually. Okay, so this is what you are going to be, it is what you're going to be graded on, but it's actually what we're going to be looking for in your submissions. So the lesson plans, so remembering that one lesson plan is most probably going to be 2 learning activities. So you've got 2 lessons with a total of 4 learning activities overall, should show evidence of an integrated theme, and they should link the 4 learning activities together and therefore the 2 lessons together, and address the 4 strands of the performing arts or the visual arts curriculum. So we'll just unpack that bit a little bit first of all. So it's got this word integrated in there. In arts education, you can have a discipline-based approach to learning, you can have an integrated approach, or you can have a cross-curricular approach, or you can have approaches that blend some of those. For the ease of understanding what those are, a discipline-based approach is when you very much focus on the music learning or the drama learning or the visual arts learning, and it involves aesthetics, it involves the history of that particular discipline, it involves developing really strong skills in that discipline, and I suppose in a way is about becoming a musician or becoming a visual artist or becoming a media artist or becoming an actor at some point. An integrated theme is when you take the 5 disciplines, so dance, drama, media arts, music, or visual arts, or some of those themes, and you work with them together. So a prime example is going to be the performing arts with Beth and Kathleen, where you're working with dance, drama, and music very much together and understanding how those 3 disciplines really sort of support each other and underpin each other. In visual arts, we have looked really at the visual arts component with a bit of media arts in week 4, and there will be further discussion about that. So the integrated part of it can be addressed by how you develop a connection between dance, drama, and music for your performing arts one, and how you develop a connection for visual arts and media arts for your visual arts assignment. How the next thing is how these link together. Okay, so you don't want in, for instance, in visual arts, one lesson that is about learning how to make clay pots, and then the second lesson is understanding practice of David Hockney. I'm sure there is some connection that can be found somewhere along the line, but in terms of a primary class, that would not work very well. Okay, so your lessons want to flow into each other, as do your activities. They want to sort of make sense, and they want to be sequential. You would never just have 2 lessons in a primary classroom to deal with a whole topic. Okay, I mean, in the arts, you're looking at a 4-week project really. So there is an element of the contrived about this. The reason why it's 2 lessons and 4 learning activities is that we want to see evidence of particular bits of learning. And the way that you are going to demonstrate that is your understanding of the 4 strands. So in the arts curriculum, we've got explore and express, practices, present and perform, and respond and interpret. And they can be put into any order and into any kind of relationship with each other, so that you can see them in the same lesson, different lessons, all the rest of it. We have those 4 distinct strands, so they work very well with this idea of the four activities. Your lessons need to demonstrate a knowledge of the concepts and structure of the performing arts or visual arts and their curricula, pedagogies and teaching strategies appropriate to the various art forms, including any issues of safe working practices, including the ethical use of ICT, strategies to explicitly teach the literacy and numeracy demands of the content, appropriate resources and strategies, including ethical use of ICT to meet the needs of diverse learners, multicultural perspectives, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander learners, assessment strategies of and for learning, and evaluation processes to determine the effectiveness of teaching and learning. Now, that may look like a really big list. You've got to remember that for each task, so for the performing arts one, it's sort of a total of or equivalent to 2,500 words. And for the visual arts, it's also 2,500 words. So, the whole assignment task is these 2 lessons and your resources. So whilst that list looks really extensive, you will be addressing it in quite a succinct way in your lesson plans. And the lesson plan template allows you to put all of this information in. Okay, so there are sections for these, whether they're combined or individual, but all of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, all these 6 elements of criteria number 1 have got a place in the lesson plan template. Okay. A suggestion for the development of this criterion number 1 and your lessons. Now, this is only a suggestion. This would work, and you can certainly do it other ways, but this is, to give you a leg up. Lesson 1, remembering that we want to be focusing on the strands. Lesson 1, you might want to have a combination of a respond and interpret activity and a present and perform activity. You might want to think about your respond and interpret as being the responding principle. So remembering that in the arts curriculum, not only do you have those 4 strands, but you've got responding as a main way of operating, so student as audience, and you've also got making, so student as artist. So you could have respond and interpret as a strand dealt with a responding activity, and present and perform dealt with as a making activity. In lesson 2, you could be using explore and express and practices. Explore and express could be a responding one, so investigating what musicians or artists do, and practicing could be your making one. And what you're doing in there is you're showing evidence that you understand what those 4 strands are, and you also understand how responding and making are 2 key principles of the arts curriculum. If you want to develop some other way of evidencing that, absolutely go for it. But this will help you, and it certainly probably will help you in that first assignment task. And then once you've found your feet, you can begin to develop other ways of doing it as well. So have a think about that, and if you would like some further conversational feedback, we will be doing that at a later date, and I've got details about that for you. The second criterion is the development of practical and theoretical resources drawn from the 6 workshops to support and inform teaching and learning in the performing arts or the visual arts primary classroom context. So those 6 resources come directly from your workshop. So it's effectively a reflective review of your workshop, from which you draw practical and theoretical guidelines that you could give to a teacher. So think about this in a way of, if I gave this resource to an experienced teacher, so a teacher with a few years under their belt, would they be able to do something with my resources? So if you were just to hand over an image of an artwork, an experienced teacher could do something with that, I would imagine. However, that's not what we're looking for. We'd look for an image and maybe some guidelines and some practical advice about how you could run that workshop, and then some of the theoretical models that might underpin it, and perhaps even some of the policy models that underpin it. So policy includes curriculum, it includes the latest thinking on the importance of experiential learning in galleries and things like that. Again, that needs to be unpacked a bit more, but we've got time to do it. And now that you're finding your feet in the course, we'll certainly ramp that up over the next few weeks. Also, within criteria number 2 is this ability to reflect upon and document your own learning in the performing arts and visual arts workshops, and to apply those to the development of this educational resource. So what is it that you learnt in the workshop, and how can you refine that and recraft it into this educational resource that's going to help teachers? So the educational resource it's not for me and it's not for Beth. It is actually for a teacher out there. So look at it through the lens of, would a teacher find this really succinct, small little package that I have developed from each workshop helpful? So really with these 2 tasks, so this is the performing arts task and the visual arts task, see them as, as almost like one and the same. So the only difference being the art focus. So see it as, you're developing assessment number 1, and then you're developing assessment number 2. But really, at the end of the semester, these 2 things can go together. These 2 things can be a really great resource package that actually shows evidence of understanding of the four strands, the 2 principles of making and responding across 5 arts disciplines. And that is a really substantial bit of learning. And once you get to that point, you'll be really proud of yourself. And the fact that both of the assessment tasks are the same does mean that in that second one, you'll be refining your knowledge and your understanding, your ability to design lessons a lot more. And there's always a great sense of satisfaction in that. In terms of the format, the lesson plan template is available on Leo, and that template is to be used for the performing arts assessment and for the visual arts one. Now, it is worth having a session to unpack the template because it's got a couple of things in it that I think will help. And so what I'm going to be doing is on Tuesday the 27th of March at 12:30, I'm going to be running an Adobe Connect session. So that is the link to it. The link is also going to be up on Leo, so you can access it that way. Adobe Connect can be accessed from a desktop, from a mobile device, from a laptop. If you're using a mobile device, it can be you can download the Adobe Connect app in iOS and Android. Importantly, if you can't make that session, the Adobe Connect session is recorded, so that it'll be put up online. If you've never been in an Adobe Connect session before, you are able to watch the presentation. You will see a video cam of the presenter, so in this case it'll be me, and there's also a chat function where you can type questions and help each other out. Adobe Connect sessions are really useful, okay? So I would really encourage you to try and attend it in person if you can, bearing in mind that next week you're still not allowed on placement, but if you can't attend it in person at that time, do not worry, because it'll be recorded. And what I will be doing with that is spending a good 30 minutes unpacking the lesson plan template for you, and giving you some ideas about how you can use it very much to your advantage. In terms of the format for your educational resources, I am going to say it'll be much better to submit them online. So submitting them online means you need to consider how you want them together. Now remember that when you're submitting them online, that means that you can actually combine your lesson plans and your educational resources into one document or package, whatever you want it to be, and then that's how you can submit it on the submission date. And so you're very much seeing there the lesson plans as the same kind of they're in the same package as the practical and theoretical resources, and combined that is your educational resource kit. So you might even want to think about how you can make your lessons align with the resource package. You are giving, obviously you will need to have some kind of theme, the idea of them being integrated and being sequential and being linked means that you will need a big idea for those lessons. I'm not going to give you a big idea. I'm not going to say it has to be sustainability, or it has to be Asian studies, or it has to be this, that, or the other. But again, once you start to have your ideas, run them past us. What would be a good idea that would link those four lessons, and how perhaps can I make it link into the rest of the curriculum and all that kind of stuff. Again, remember that if you gave these resources to a teacher, would they be able to do something with them? There is the practical and theoretical component. So certainly within the visual arts ones, you're going to be thinking about the art making that we have done, the art making, the art responding that we've done in the class, and some of those theoretical models we've used to assist. So things such as visual thinking strategies, the conceptual framework, the Feldman model. How do those underpin our thinking? And we'll also examine in the coming weeks some more of the theoretical components. Think about how policy, and policy encapsulates curriculum and recent reports. So there has been a recent report about the importance of music in schools. There's been a report in 2008 called First We See, which is about the importance of visual learning and visual arts in schools. What are those reports telling us? What are they saying that we need to attend to? In your educational resources, think about the images that you could include. So I've been encouraging students in my class to take images of the process of art making. So you'll remember that when we did collage, I asked you to actually take photographs, of step 1, step 2, step 3. Those kind of sequential images show, they're really great in a resource. They show a teacher how you can actually go about it. Consider what programs you might use to bring this to fruition. iBooks Author is fantastic, and I've got some examples up on Leo from a similar assessment task. It's not this one, so don't go using it as a template. But these are two really incredible examples by students who had prior experience in using different kind of softwares. But they give you a clue as to what you can do, and certainly what you can be doing by the end of the semester. Okay, so remembering that there's a difference between now and what will be going on at the end of the semester. You don't have to use iBooks Author. You could use something like Word, so you can put your resources all together in Word and then convert to PDF to give it that extra bit of slick to make it look professional. So have a think about how you might want to put together the educational resources, remembering that it'd be a good idea to include the lessons in that as well. Go back to these criteria, criterion 1 and criterion 2, and think about the specifics within them. So what are these 6 things that we want to be looking for in the lesson plans, and what are these bits here? So what are the 2 things we're looking for in those resources? So we're looking for the practical and the theoretical, and we're also looking at how you've been able to reflect upon and craft those workshops into something usable in terms of a classroom. And very importantly, remember this online session on Tuesday, the 27th of March, where I will unpack the lesson plan and answer any other questions. And if you find this session helpful, I'm really happy to run other ones over the course of the next few weeks, unpacking particular parts of the assignment. So I hope you find this useful. Okay, come back at me with any questions that you've got. And remember that we are here to assist and help with this and make it into an enjoyable experience. We're very cognizant that for many of us, this is the first time that we've been back in a visual arts classroom or a music classroom or a dance classroom in a long time. It's a very different approach to literacy and numeracy. You read and write and count every day of your lives. You probably don't create music or artworks every day of your life. So there is a different level of approach in EDAR504. Look forward to speaking to you all soon.